Hey folks, Ariel over here at Finance with a little tree and bush update, something some of you guys have been asking for a while, but we're right about the time of spring here where lilacs are blooming, whenever that would be in your area, and so some things are just leafing out. Where I'm standing right now is the existing tree line that was here when we purchased the property. These are almost all poplars. There's a couple cottonwoods in there that were here when we purchased the place. You can probably hear the creek burbling behind me. And we have also started adding some conifer trees into this tree line, like this little guy. We've got, I think, 7 of these along here now, all about this size or smaller still, but you can see how much beautiful new growth they have put out this year. The lighter green tips are the new growth for the year, and they seem to be doing well. Several are spruces and several are firs. They're wild ones that were dug up from where they were. We've dug several batches of wild trees where they were like growing into hay meadows and such, or lanes where they would otherwise have just gotten mowed off. So we dug them up to see if they'd survive, and almost all of them have so far. Also, we are, I think, maybe holding our own in the battle with the quackgrass. I'll probably be doing some more videos talking about quackgrass because that's definitely consuming a huge proportion of our time. But it's super invasive. It's not even native to anywhere on this continent. It's part of all the native grasses. Now that I've realized what we're fighting, we definitely made some big mistakes last year with not knowing what we were up against. But now we're doing this around all the trees, getting it all cut back, pulling all the rhizomes out because it will both choke and poison its competition, and putting down some plastic so it can't come back, and using the gravel just to hold the plastic in place so it doesn't blow away when we get wind. So anyway, our little conifers are doing well, and that's really exciting because they should help fill in this tree line. I know, Willie, you're very loud. As we want to kind of expand the wood's edge thicker this direction, and we're just going to keep planting. But so far, they are all looking pretty good. So as we start down this side of the property, we have a couple cherry bushes. That is a Romeo cherry. And this one is a Nanking cherry. They're both bushes, not trees, but they both make a fairly sweet tart cherry. The tart cherries are all hardier, more cold hardy plants, but some people have been working to hybridize varieties that are a little bit sweeter, because things like a Bing cherry don't actually grow here. And right there, you can see just how big a comfrey plant gets when it does not have competition with grass, because that was a spot we had dug up for something else. So when I stuck that plant in there, it didn't have any grass to compete with. And right over here in front of it is a peony. A friend gave me several of those, and I've got a bunch of them planted down this side of the property line. Behind me here, we've got another one of the poplars that was growing here, and this kind of pretty gold one is not actually sick. It's supposed to be a golden elderberry, and it is coming out super lush and thick. This, once again, should get to be a pretty sizable bush, and also make us, flowers and fruit can both be used, and the bees love the flowers. So we're looking forward to seeing that one get really big, but I'm very happy with how thick it's growing. We come down the property line this way, we have more peonies in between, but this is a a crabapple, and they grow all over the area. They do very well. It's even got some little apples forming. It blooms beautifully. It's one of the few trees that's actually taller than me, so that's exciting. Then next here we've got 3 little caraganas, or Siberian pea shrubs. They're another very hardy bush. They're nitrogen fixing. They make a beautiful yellow flower that bees love, and they make a little pea pod that birds will eat. So they're doing okay. I'll show you what one looks like that hasn't been choked by grass at all. We got these unchoked pretty early this spring, and they're starting to grow, but they would be a lot bigger if it hadn't been for that. But they look healthy right now. This is a little lilac that needs to do a lot of filling out and getting bushy. It was one I had bought as a $1 sale pot that looked mostly dead many years ago at the end of a season when a nursery was cleaning out all their stuff. Wasn't even sure if it would live. I got 4 of these and planted them all around my clearing, and they didn't really get enough sunlight, but they did live, so I've transplanted them all, and they're all alive right now, and it just has finished blooming. It has beautiful, beautiful scented flowers. So I'm hoping now that it gets more light, it's going to really bush out here and look good. And then this lower bush is a honeyberry, and I need to get a couple more because it needs some pollinator friends, but it grows a little berry much like a blueberry, except it's kind of elongated instead of round, and it bloomed gorgeous earlier in the year, and I see a few berries starting to form, and and I've had it for years. I moved that from my old clearing too, and it seems to do very well here. So it's had no real care at all other than being watered some, and that is a tough bush in cold climates. This tiny little bit here, coming out of what's left of that dead stalk, is a mulberry that's supposed to be super tough. It grew last year. It was a bare root stick. It grew and then it froze, and then this spring it started to grow out, and then it all froze off in one of our late frosts, and then that happened again, and I thought for sure this thing is going to be dead, but it's still trying to push up branches there, so we'll see if it survives in the long run. These two caraganas were planted at the same time as all the rest. I weeded them multiple times last year, but we only got the grass really cut back from them thoroughly just a week or so ago. You can see how much smaller they are. Some of their ones that were the same as when they were planted are level with my head. These guys barely come to my knees. And this is a little tiny comfrey, and that's what it looks like when it's been choked by grass, instead of that great big bushy looking one. These two little guys that have a lot of dead stick, but do have some green leaves, are sea buckthorns. They make a very nutritious berry, so it's good to see they're surviving so far. They're supposed to be tough. Hopefully they really take off here. This little maple did make it. I think there's two. It's got growth coming out several places there. That's really good to see. So overall the orchard has done really well. A couple of our varieties we have two of a single variety. This one's an Evans Bali cherry. I'm pretty sure that will do well here. I have some friends in the area who have had a couple huge ones for like 30 years, so I know they can survive in the long term. But we have two, and they're both doing great. And overall, of the 15 orchard trees, 14 of them made it. One little plum didn't. I don't know what happened. It was growing last year, and this spring it's dead. We have two different honey crisps. This little one didn't make it. It was growing last year, nothing this spring. This plum looks... We have two Goodland apples as well. You can hear the ducks. This is the second of those Bali cherries. And then some kind of pear whose name I don't know. The label was all gone when I bought it at the nursery. It had worn off. There was just a piece of duct tape stuck to it that said pear. But it is very happy. It has grown out some massive new growth this spring. You can kind of see the different branch colors there. I mean, it's put out like a foot of brand new growth. So that guy's happy. This berm bed kind of goes down the side of the garden here by the tiny house, and it's got a lot of herbs and flowers, as you can see. A lot of strawberries. You guys watched me transplant them last fall from the little root start, or the little runner starts. But it's also got a bunch of bushes. The idea was this would be a nice little, windbreak shelter here as well. I've got several 9-barks that made it. They looked dead for a while in the spring. I thought they were, and then they grew out. Several several varieties of currant. Currants grow wild here. I also have some cultivated varieties. They're doing well. That's the smallest of the three. They're all doing spectacularly. And then I have a couple smaller sticks here that again were things I actually thought hadn't made it. They were dead sticks a lot of the way through the year, and then they grew out. But this is another currant. It's looking great. There's several small lilacs, several 9-barks, and a couple small nut bushes. This one, for a sense of scale, these were all bare root sticks last fall, or last spring when I planted them. And this is this big and bushy and sending out gobs and gobs of new growth. Also going to get to a garden update shortly. Things are looking pretty good. That's how it grew in this bed. So far, I think I've only had one bush die in this whole bed. This was created with the leftover soil basically from filling the garden beds. And so because it had all been dug up, turned up, because originally it was the topsoil ripped off of where we built Clay's shop, there was not a lot of grass in here. Now it's trying to come in. I got to keep weeding it back out. But there was not really grass competition here, and so everything I planted just thrived. And for a comparison, here's what a currant bush looks like that had to fight the grass last year. It was actually planted before any of these three. Very, very little grass competition. Check out the difference. So this guy was planted before those other currants. It's growing, it's alive, it's even making berries this year. I think it's going to survive in the long term. It's this is a gooseberries and currants are kind of like cousins. I've got a bunch of both. This one's actually a gooseberry, but it's sending out new growth now. But this is all the bushier it looks. And we made a big mistake last year. We had, such extreme heat and drought. We did let the grass grow up some around our little seedlings, thinking it would help protect them, shelter them, keep the ground more moist. Had I realized that we had crackgrass that was that aggressively trying to kill them and poison them, I would have never done that. But this is all the bigger it got with that kind of competition. It made it, a few others didn't, but I think if we can keep it unchoked by the grass, it'll get big. Also here in the kind of berm bed beside the garden are several bushes I did not think were going to make it. They look like dead sticks, but that one's it's some kind of viburnum or a berry, I forget. That's another currant bush doing great. That's a little baby lilac. This is another one whose names I forgot. That's the same as the first one. That one's another lilac. This, I think, is the same as the other two. It doesn't look super happy, but it's actually growing, and I thought it was dead. There's one that actually did die. There's a dead stick. And let's see, down here somewhere, little lilac coming out of a dead stick stump there, too. So, thanks, Velcro. Some of the stuff made it that I did think was dead, so that's encouraging. And we've got sticks like this that looked mostly dead, but that is a little elderberry coming up from the base. It again had gotten almost completely killed by the grass, but if we can keep it away from it now, maybe it will survive. Been trying to grow a variety of things. This is supposed to be a very cold hardy bamboo that I'd like to just fill in here along the fence. It came out of the winter looking really, really green, and then in the spring freezes, a lot of these tops froze off. But it is starting to send out a lot of new shoots like that guy from the base, so I'm hopeful in the long term it's going to survive and eventually fill in a thick patch of, did I say rhubarb? I meant bamboo, if that's what I said. That's bamboo. Over here is a little aspen cluster. That was another wild one we dug out of a field edge so it wouldn't get mowed off. It's growing and happy. It's a native tree here. We planted it there. We've dug quite a few clusters like that. A few didn't make it, but the majority have. And behind me here is a great big lilac. This is another one of my little dollar pots at the end of a season, and then got dug up and transplanted from my old clearing, where its roots were so embedded in between the boulders that pretty much made up all the ground there. I wasn't sure it was going to survive. It's leaning. That's what it was doing in the clearing, looking for light. It's leaning, it's blooming, but I'm hopeful here with plenty of sunshine it's going to bush out and actually get thick, which I'm optimistic about because there toward the base it is starting to do that. This little one I call Amy's plum. It's kind of a bush plum, and my friend Amy gave it to me. She had some growing at, it's got, you know, you can see new growth coming out there at the base, and up here she had some growing in their property when they moved in, and this was a baby off of hers. So I'm not sure what variety it is, but it's been growing in this area for a while now and surviving. So I think it will in the long run. Oh, this is exciting. I came over here to tell you that neither one of my walnuts made it, but I'm just seeing this morning. It is indeed trying to send up a new shoot out of its root. So maybe it will. Not sure. I had 2 of these. The other one still looks dead, but I'm just seeing this morning, so maybe it'll grow. This is another crabapple, and once again, these grow wild, well, not all wild, but they grow all over the place, and they do well for decades and decades, and so I expect it to do well in the long term here. It bloomed beautifully just earlier in the year. On the other hand, oh, here's another one that I thought I was going to tell you was dead. This is a beaked hazel, and again, just this morning, see, this is why I didn't do my update earlier. Just this morning, there's a little new shoot coming out of there. I was walking over here to tell you all of my beaked hazelnuts died and all of my honey locusts died. Maybe I'll be wrong about both of them. That one is sending up a new little shoot just now at almost the beginning of July. I don't know if it'll make it, but that's exciting. This guy I had high hopes for. It's supposed to be an Idaho Carpathian walnut, which is supposed to be the cold hardiest sweet, you know, walnut there is. It grew out last year, grew this whole stalk last year. But it didn't seem like it got its you know, nutrients pulled back in from its leaves before it froze, and I'm not seeing any sign of life yet this year. These are 2 more kinds of currants. Again, these are how small the bushes are when they were, you know, competing with grass for much of the year, but they are growing, they bloomed, and they are making berries, so I think in the long term they will survive, especially if we can keep them from having to compete with that poisonous grass. On down here we've got more clumps of wild aspens. Like I said, the majority that we've dug survived. Every now and then you get one that just didn't. They kind of grow off a taproot from their parent tree, and sometimes depending how that gets cut when you transplant them, which you can't tell till you dig them up, sometimes they make it, sometimes they don't. Most of them have. This one is a regular elderberry. It's not gold like the other one you saw. And this was in my old clearing. I dug it up. It had never grown taller than this in like the 7 years it had been there. I don't think it was getting quite enough sunlight either, but it is really bushing out from the bottom here now, and it's even starting to make some little flowers I see. So hopefully that again will survive in the long run. A couple of these smaller pine trees that we had planted out here in the more wide open, they got a lot more wind burn through the winter without the shelter of the existing poplars. But they are surviving, they are pushing out new growth, so we're hopeful that they're going to make it in the long term. And then these are more just of the little aspens and another little spruce over there. We come out toward the gate here. All these caraganas, same as the ones you saw earlier, were planted at the same time. They were the same size. This is how tall one looks that really never had grass competition, because its whole time here we had this pretty much all torn up, you know, to put a lane in, and so we have 3 of these along here. This is the tallest, but they're all growing really well. We've got our small mungo pines growing out here. They're not big yet by any means, but they're sending up some pretty good little candlesticks of new growth. And this is another one of my small lilacs that I transplanted from the old place. It is really getting bushy here with plenty of sunshine. This isn't really a bush, it's a vine, but this is a honeysuckle vine, and it is growing really well, and it's just starting to bloom. It's loaded with buds, and the bees and hummingbirds love it, but it is growing really well. So overall, a lot of the stuff we planted has made it. Of the things that did not survive, I'm not sure whether to blame it more on the record heat and drought and that we had last year. It was the hottest, driest year in like 100 years. Now this spring has been record cold, and the 2 years before that were 2 of the coldest ever recorded as well. So anyway, we get quite the extremes here. So I don't know whether to blame a lot of the stuff we did lose on that. I also think this stuff is largely responsible for it. Now that I've understood what we're fighting, and realized how invasive it is and how it chokes out everything else. I mean, even thistles and stuff don't grow on this property anywhere this grass is growing. It really can outcompete everything. And so I think a lot of our losses are due to that, because like I showed you there in the bed by the garden, anywhere that we didn't have grass competition, pretty much everything made it. So I think that was a big part of it. It was definitely a mistake to let the grass grow up around it to try to help shelter it from the scorching sun last year. That was a very bad idea in hindsight, but we didn't realize that. So we did lose probably of the, what have we planted now? I don't know, 250 some trees and bushes. We probably lost 60 or 70 of the smaller ones especially. A couple things just don't make it when you transplant, that's expected. I think a lot of the others we wouldn't have lost if it hadn't been for the extreme heat and the drought. And some of them were, you know, there's duplicates of many of the things I showed you. We planted lots of sea berries, lots of caraganas, you know, a bunch of crab apples, and so on. And occasionally one wouldn't, or aspens, you know, occasionally one or two didn't make it and the rest did. So I assume that was a problem with that individual plant. But then when it's like so far, other than that one little one sending out a shoot now, pretty much all the nuts I planted of various kinds, almost none of them made it. I got some supposed to be super hardy windbreak creating little pines, Scotch pines. Every single one of them died in the first couple weeks. I planted 10 of them. Nothing ever grew back out. I don't know why. They're what people plant in the harshest areas as windbreaks, but not a single one survived for me. Maybe they really can't handle the grass. Anyway, so that's kind of a tree update and where we're at. We're going to keep planting probably for years and years, and hopefully what we've got here grows, and hopefully our strategy of not letting it look like this wild poplar where the grass gets almost as tall as me, but keeping the grass ripped away from it and prevented from growing back in, hopefully that will help everything.
We hope you enjoyed it.
Come back next time for more adventures.
Thanks for watching.